Everybody, this is Gregory with 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to continue our series on The Chosen and how Catholics should not be watching this show. Now, before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Namo Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Sancte Michael, Archangel, defending us in prelio contra nequitium et insidious diaboli est presidium impera illideus sapuchista pecamur, tilque princip malitia celestis satinum, aliasque spiritus malignus quid perditionem adamarum, per vengantia mundo divina virtute and infernum detrude. Amen. We definitely need to say Michael's prayer. Look, okay, so this I think is probably my fourth episode on The Chosen. I'll put in banners for the previous ones. I really don't want to kind of repeat what I've talked about in those other episodes. In short, The Chosen is created by evangelical Protestants. Dallas Jenkins' dad created the Left Behind series of books that were very popular about 20 years ago. It's also bankrolled by a very wealthy Mormon, and both of these groups have historically seen the Catholic Church as the Antichrist. So you have to kind of understand that background there. Now, many people will say, well, the actor that plays Jesus in The Chosen is a Catholic. This is the same actor who on social media has shown support for gay marriage. So it doesn't really mean much. As I mentioned, I think in the third episode, sure, you could have a nominal Catholic or lapsed Catholic, and they understand from the public relations perspective, The Chosen's about making money. That's the number one criteria. And I know a lot of people get all upset about it, but it's a number one criteria is to make money. So they're smart. They're like, well, we'll get the evangelicals because this is right up their purview. We're adding more Mormon quotes and so forth we talked about in the previous episode, but we need to get the Catholics because we need to bring them to Christ because, of course, they don't think we're Christians. So let's get a guy who is a lapsed nominal Catholic and bring him in. They're not going to bring in Jim Caviezel. Jim Caviezel wouldn't do this show. The actor from Passion of the Christ and Sound of Freedom. He's not going to do this show. So let's bring in this guy. Then we talked about in the previous episode how on like the gag reels and in the background, you saw gay flags everywhere, gay LGBTQ support flags on the set of The Chosen. But here's the big thing about it's not necessarily to me Dallas Jenkins and his dad and kind of the Protestant background of this. This is more toward the Catholics who watch this show. And I think this show is really made for poorly catechized women. Because if you look at the show, I mean, we could talk about the doctrinal and dogmatic problems that are in this show. For example, we talked about, I think in the second episode of The Chosen, how it shows Mary having labor pains. Mary didn't have labor pains. She was a perpetual virgin. She did not have labor pains. It's one of the dogmas of the church. Mary did not have labor pains. Christ passed through her without disrupting her hymen, and she certainly didn't have labor pains. Okay, but they're Protestants. They're going to put that in there. It doesn't really matter. And there's other heretical teachings that you find in The Chosen. And also they play with things and they add things that just aren't scriptural. Peter and his wife are having fertility problems? What? Jesus is nervous in the Sermon on the Mount, so he asks Matthew for help? What? And then the little things like the 4 people that bring the paralytic down from the roof, one of them's a woman now. Now, some of you who defend this show because, I mean, you are worshiping this show. This is like your mammon. This is your idolatry. Will defend it to the death. And you're not going to hear anything I have to say. You want to believe what you want to believe about this show. And many people love this show. I think if I had to delineate a sketch of their background, many of them are lapsed Catholics. Many of them are liberal Catholics. And this show has, in their words, like brought them back to Christ. Or they'll say, this is the real Jesus. This is the Jesus that I grew up with in the 70s and 80s in Sunday school. Buddy Jesus, laughy Jesus. There's going to be a future scene where he's going to be urinating. Do you think that's appropriate for the Son of God to be shown urinating? He's having problems urinating? No. But this is the Jesus that I grew up with in the 70s and 80s. Jesus with the thumbs up, like in Kevin Smith's Dogma movies. Happy Jesus. This fleshes out Jesus. This is the real Jesus. No, Dallas Jenkins admits that he's writing this. Yes, he'll glean some stuff from the Gospels, but he's creating a Jesus. He's creating a Jesus, and as a creator of a show, as a showrunner, what do you have to do? You have to create suspense. You have to flesh out characters. You have to put words into characters that are not scripturally based. You have to create suspense and cliffhangers and emotional pulls. And so this show really appeals to women. It appeals, I believe, more to women than to men. Because I think men, as a whole, we know this, are more kind of like rooted in logic and reason. Women are more rooted in emotion. So when you hear a lot of responses about this show, like if you go to the comments on YouTube on chosen snippets and so forth, it's always like, this made me feel, it's all feelings and emotions. And feelings and emotions can be manipulated, right? This is one of the differences between the Catholic Mass and going to the Protestant megachurch service. And bless the Protestants for that, but they have to feel the emotion. You don't have to feel anything. You should be pursuing the truth. And the Chosen does not show true Jesus. It's a fabricated Jesus. It's made up. Where in the gospel does it show that Jesus was nervous in the Sermon on the Mount? You know, I can go through a list ad infinitum. Where in the gospel is Jesus from chosen scenes? They don't. But he probably did do this. But we don't know that. It's not in scripture or in sacred tradition. So taking license, creative license, on the Son of God and in the apostles. And look how they portray Mary, right? Not attractive, comely. Like, of course they're not going to portray Mary in a great light. Taking creative license is dangerous. It's very dangerous. And the show, as I've mentioned repeatedly, should be avoided from Catholics. Catholics, if you want to watch a better description of Jesus, I mean, go to all the movies that we used to do, like The Robe, Ben-Hur, you know, those kind of movies, EWTN content. We have the new movie on Padre Pio. I mean, there's a lot of content out there. I would even recommend the cartoon Superbook that they used to make in the 80s. Now they've redone it. It's on Amazon Prime. It's made by Protestants, but at least that is more scriptural than this. But this show appeals to, I think, women who have left the faith or left Christianity, and they watch this, and it's like they're watching Gilmore Girls. It's like they get sucked in to this fabricated world that is not scriptural, but they don't really care, right? This is Jesus, my friend. And notice in the Chosen, like, Jesus is never telling us to take up our cross. Jesus is not telling us that we're going to suffer. Jesus isn't saying any of these scriptural things. It's all, buddy Jesus, hey Jesus, Jesus is laughing, ha, oh, Jesus is nervous, huh? Guys, you have to have some discernment. And the biggest discernment is what the creator, Dallas Jenkins, says about it. Like, he's like, why do I need to put the transfiguration in the show? It doesn't move the plot. Have you noticed that there's very little in The Chosen that depicts Jesus as Christ the King, that depicts Jesus' divinity at all? It's just Jesus down in the streets, Jesus as a normal human being. I think we've done a very good job the last 40 years as Jesus as man. And I think we're forgetting the true hypostatic union, Jesus as God as well. And I think there's just so many landmines. And I think the biggest landmine is simply that this show was not created by Catholics. It has an agenda. It has an agenda. It has an agenda. And all good Catholics should avoid this show. Guys, post in the comments. I'd like to hear from you. If you agree or disagree. If you think it's totally okay to write the character of Jesus. Until next time, take care. God bless and pray.